My name, as mentioned, was Brent. Let's take a look at some of the things around Microsoft 365. So we're going to take a look at sort of the idea behind how the Microsoft sort of world works in terms of the Office suite and using the online agendas and facilities that are available around how Microsoft works. We're going to take a look at, as was mentioned, at a very high level of a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here. I'm going to look at it from the point of view of how to actually do a deployment from the point of view of I've already selected my templates. I've already selected that M365 is going to be my platform that I'm going to use in the cloud. And so what do I need to do from a project point of view, from an organizational point of view, from a person point of view, to get this thing installed and get it up and running and working as well as possible. So the first thing we need to do is, obviously, we need to plan the deployments, right? So when we're talking about Microsoft 365 deployments, we've got all sorts of different things that we have to keep in mind. We've got Active Directory. So in Azure AD, we're going to manage all of our user IDs, user accounts, group memberships, all of that sort of thing that you would do with your on-premise Active Directory infrastructure, but now we're moving it up into the cloud. We're also going to take a look at different applications that we might be able to deploy, such as SharePoint Online or Exchange Online, or even if we go into a little bit further, any of the Dynamics platforms. So whether it's finance and operations or customer engagement, sales, or any of those sorts of things, we need to take a look at how we're going to get all of that stuff into the cloud. How are we going to do this properly? And for us to do this correctly, we need to do it as a sort of a phased approach, right? And there should be 3 phases to your project. Phase 1 should be the envisioning of everything. So this is where we're going to sit down and we're going to do the planning part of the project. We're going to look at it from the point of view of how do I envision everything being deployed. And for that, we're going to do identify the stakeholders rather, including identity management, application deployment, and who is going to have a say in how this stuff is done, right? This is not an IT process. This is an IT-led process, right? But IT is not dictating to the organization, you will do this, right? The whole point of this is that, yes, IT is leading this process. Yes, IT is going to manage this process, but we need to have stakeholders from all of the business units within the entire organization to get this thing off the ground and working as we want it to. We also need to then assemble a team, right? So that team is going to be made up of a whole bunch of different people. So there's going to be team members that are responsible for identity management, right? So they're going to be the Active Directory people. They're going to manage user accounts. They're going to manage group memberships. They're going to manage access to resources. We're going to have the mail or the Exchange communications type people. They'll be responsible for things like Teams and Exchange and maybe some file share stuff. You might have the SharePoint people if you go with SharePoint Online for storage and portals and all that sort of thing that you've got. So, and then of course you might have the ordinary end user who actually has to use this on a daily basis that would say, well, if we do X, Y, Z, it might make it a little bit easier for people to adapt to it. And then lastly is the different business scenarios that you're trying to work with the software. So again, identity management, email, data storage, portals, collaboration, all of those fancy code words that everybody uses in the IT industry to get this thing up and running. The second phase is onboarding, right? It's all well and good that you've got this great system in place. Now you need to get people to use it. And that's implementation of the technology, training the end users, training, because if you don't train the users, they'll just sit there and go, I don't like it. And it might not be that they don't like it, it's just that they don't understand it because they were never taught properly. And so, you need to make sure that they understand what you're doing. And then rolling it out. And then lastly is the value that you're retrieving from it. Monitor the ongoing value, making sure that everything that you're doing is working and is working the way you want it to. Manage change. So as the software is implemented and updated, that you can have that change managed in your organization. And ultimately, this is what the deployment looks like. So again, you have your envisioning process, you have your onboarding process, and you have your value-driven process, right? And so those three things in conjunction with the technology itself will give you that outcome that you're hoping for in terms of being able to do identity management, being able to do SharePoint Online, and so on. So as far as the first part, when we're looking at this system, we need to figure out who's going to be responsible for certain things in this process, right? And again, every project needs to have an executive owner, or executive sponsor, whoever that happens to be. They need to have the person who's responsible for determining the successful rollout of that item, and then the champions, right? And this is the department staff. So generally the way it works in most organizations is that, so as an example, let's say that you have, let's say that you're going to do an Exchange Online rollout. So you're moving all of your email from on-premise to Exchange Online, and in theory, the user should not notice any change in the way that the system functions and the way that they actually use their end user application and all that sort of stuff. And so you would pick a person from departments or from the organization who would be the champions, okay? And those champions would be the ones that were going to, be the primary source of contact for the end users when they have problems. So they can say, well, I'm trying to do this, and we talked about this in our class, but I can't seem to get this to work properly. And so they'd be the sort of the first point of contact, and then they would go up to, IT or to whoever else to get further help with it. You'd have all the project managers, training managers, all that sort of, all these people that are key and important in the project that need to be identified sort of at the beginning so that you can do identity management and you can do all these other sorts of things to make the project successful. And when we're doing the stakeholder development and identification, we need to break it down into 4 things, right? As someone on a team, right, whatever that team is, not Microsoft Teams, but whatever that team is, I want to be able to do something. So let's say that I'm going to be implementing Microsoft Dynamics 365 sales, right? So I want to do sales management, right? Well, there's my tool. So how do I get the tool installed so that I can do that? Well, I want to have a single vision of the proposal that everyone can access and edit rather than emailing different versions around to the team. Well, that sounds like collaboration, right? So that would mean that I would be able to collaborate within that application to allow others to be able to go in and view and make comments on that particular proposal, whatever it is that you're doing. In this case, we're saying we want to use SharePoint. Great. Well, so we're gonna create a proposal. We're gonna store it to a SharePoint site. We're gonna give people access to that SharePoint site through the sales team. They can go in and they can bash it around and they can do whatever they want. And then from there, they could make projects, documents rather, for things like Word and PowerPoint and all the rest of it, so that they could present those to the customer. And then lastly, I'll know it's successful when Mr. Customer signs on the dotted line and says, yes, I'm going to buy $1 million of widgets from your organization. Right? So this is sort of the way that you want to identify who the major stakeholders are in this process and be able to then work with them. Some things else that we need to do is we need to determine and identify success, as was mentioned. We need to then say, okay, well, what makes this successful? Like, why are we doing this to make it successful? And we need to have some criteria. So as part of this process, we need to specify, in this case, let's say that we want to use training effectiveness, right? So we increase usage correlates to training effectiveness. We could do it through quantitatively, we could do it through reports, we could do it through just talking to people, we could do it through a survey, right? Like, I don't know about many organizations that you're from, but the organization that I'm in, every time we have a meeting, they send a survey out. I get surveyed to death. If you look at my calendar on a daily basis, 3/4 of my calendar is made up with meetings and the other quarter is made up with surveys that I have to fill out. And there's a very small window of about an hour that I actually have time to do work, which is kind of sad some days, but that's just the world of pre-sales. And so we can use those metrics to determine whether or not we're being successful, and that we are going to actually get to where we want to go. And again, none of the technology really matters in the sense of the implementation of that technology. It's just how the user is impacted by that technology and can be successful in using it, right? Again, so if we're using Azure Active Directory and we're using all of that for cloud-based components and cloud-based access, then we're going to be able to say, yeah, the person can log in, they can go and do all the stuff that they need to do, and Bob's your uncle. All right, next. Next thing is part of this is being able to take out our business scenarios and figuring out what is being successful. And so we're going to create a plan that we will use to implement these capabilities. Pardon me. And so from here we will go through and identify things that will make it successful, and then be able to track those successful items in the system. So we'll be able to say, okay, well, I can log into the system. Yeah, okay, so I can, Azure Active Directory works. Hey, that's good. I can open up Outlook. Yeah, that works great. Perfect. I can use that as well. And so on. So this is sort of a way as part of your success plan. And now this tool is actually called Microsoft Fast Track. This is the Fast Track for Office 365. And this is sort of a way to help you implement the project. But it's a way for you to go through and keep track of the success and the time of how things are actually executing as part of your project. And in here, as part of the deployment, you'll be able to create this rollout timeline, right? So you'll be able to come up with this timeline that you want that will be used to actually make the process of the implementation of your project that much more efficient. And we can break it down into a number of different pieces. As an example, we can set it up to say, okay, well, in week 1, we want to do sort of the administrative things of the project. We want to identify who's going to be working on the project. We want to create successful plans. We want to create champions. We want to create early adoption requirements. All of that sort of administrative stuff is done in the first week. In the second week, we want to get into further things like identifying who can be the sponsor for the executive, right? Who can we tag to this, say, yeah, I'm willing to put my reputation on the line for this project to say it's successful, and that sort of stuff. So we're going to go through and identify all of these, right? From this, we will then be able to create our project plan that will be able to say, okay, how am I going to implement things like identity management? And how am I going to implement SharePoint Online? And how am I going to do all of my management of technical skills of my staff and my IT department so that I can support these initiatives properly, right? Because again, if you don't educate your users and train them well, they're not going to necessarily like the system because they don't understand the system. And I've been in several situations before as a solutions architect where I've come in sort of second to the project and had people go, this tool is useless. It's absolutely crap. It's garbage. It doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. I'm getting rid of it, right? It's like, okay, well, why doesn't it work? Well, because it's too complicated to do X, Y, and Z. And then when I actually have them show me how to do X, Y, and Z, I could say, well, that's not the right way to do it based on the way that your system was deployed. And inevitably, I find out that people were not educated properly or trained well enough to understand how it works. And then after a little while with them, to show them the more efficient way and the better way of doing things in the system that they have now without making any changes or without destroying anything or throwing it away or your new application, I would say probably 98% of the time, they come out of it going, oh, really? Okay, wow, that's cool. That makes much more sense. Now I like it, right? And it didn't take much effort to actually get that. So as part of this process and getting all of these tools involved, you will be able to create your success rate and how the system is valued in the organization. So you could stretch it out, however many weeks it's going to take for you to do this deployment, how long it's going to take you to get this thing up and running in the system, and sort of where you're going to go from there. So here you can see things like, sending out announcements and letting individuals know that, oh, starting next week, you're going to be on end user training for, how we're going to be deploying and getting the system in place and so forth. The next thing that we want to do after, of course, we've done this sort of, introduction part is we want to start doing pre-launch. So this is where we start to actually get the system in place, right? So this is where, as an IT team, as a project team, you're going to start deploying things like Azure Active Directory. So you're going to make determinations as to how users are going to log in, what restrictions you're going to have them log in with, if you're going to use things like multi-factor authentication, and then where you might put in restrictions. As an example, let's say that you don't want people to be able to log in from certain parts of the world, or that you don't want them to be able to log in outside of their IP addresses and their domains for their organization. So you can set up a lot of restrictions in the Azure Active Directory for that as well. And also in here, you will be putting in things like what groups will they belong to, so that you can identify access to resources, so things like Exchange or SharePoint or file stores or that sort of thing. And again, if you've got Active Directory, and probably most of you already have Active Directory installed in your internal organizations, all you're doing is basically shifting that from an on-premise implementation into the cloud. And so you're going to then have access to all of the same sorts of resources, but now cloud-based versus on-prem, right? As another example, if we're doing an Office rollout, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth, then we will then go into the next phase and we'll determine, okay, so who gets which application? Not everybody in the organization needs to have the enterprise version of Visio, right? You might have the engineers or the design people have Visio access. And so you'll restrict the number of user licenses that it can be associated or assigned to that particular application. And in the admin center, you're going to go through and you're going to assign the licenses and the license types to all of those individuals so that they know exactly what it is that they're trying to work on and what they're going to get access to. And then if we're doing things like the business applications, such as Dynamics or some of the other tools that are available, you will then also, as a separate project, because they're a much larger implementation process, doing things like finance and operations deployment for ERP. That's going to be a separate massive project, but it can link to the existing Office implementation. So you'll need to set up licensing for that. You'll need to set up access for that, and so forth. So you need to go through from a deployment process and identify the types of things that need to be done so that you can actually bring people into the system and then have them work with it, right? Once that has been completed, and that's going to be the longest piece of the project phase that you're going to do, is setting up those applications and identifying how you're going to do identity management and all that sort of stuff. And then getting that out to the everyday end user, right? So from there, you're going to then start implementing things like communication with the users, early adoption. You're going to be able to pick some of the users to be able to deploy it and deploy to and test it. And generally, in most organizations, that tends to be the IT department. They get to be the guinea pigs. But in a project like this, you're going to pick individual users from different business units to be able to work with the system and be able to execute it. And then you'll need to be able to support the application and get the application rolled out to the end users. Again, once you've done pre-launch, right, that's where, again, all of the work that needs to happen is going to happen in that pre-launch area. All the deployments, all the configurations, any coding that you need to do, any of that stuff is going to exist there. And then from there, you're going to get into the actual launch, right? So this is where the end users are going to start actually getting the application that you're deploying or the system that you're deploying and be able to use it. My recommendation to you is if at all possible, when you're doing this, is that you do the training for the user the day before it gets put on their desktop, whether it's Windows 11 or Exchange Online or whatever the application is, right? Always try and have the rollout for that individual user happen the day after they've gone through their training. Because if you train them now and then they don't get it for 6 weeks, they'll forget it. And then you need to have really good documentation for them to be able to go back to and refer to make sure that they actually know what it is that you're doing. Or again, they'll get frustrated and not be able to work properly with the tool. And lastly, we get into post-launch. Again, this is where we're going to take a look at and manage sort of the environments and see how things are going to be set up and configured and whatnot, and how you're going to support the users post go live, and also continuing updates of the system, being able to ensure that you have your identity in place, that you implement everything properly, that everything is secure, and that the users are going to be able to work with the tool successfully, and ultimately make the project that you're working with and deployment with that much of a success. So to wrap up, happy Halloween. I hope you like the dogs with the blankets. It's the easiest way to identify them as ghosts. But yes, so in summary, basically, you need to make sure that you have a good plan. You need to make sure that you understand the technologies that you're trying to implement. And then you need to make sure that the users who are going to be using those technologies understand what they do, how they work, and then can successfully use them. And that's it. Back to you, Lita.
Thank you so much, Brent. Just a pleasure as always. We are going to get into our question and answer session in just a moment here, but before we do, we are going to hear from Sagnik, and he is going to let us know about our products and introduce some promotions and webinar related courses. Sagnik, you should, hold on one second, be able to share your screen now, but you are still muted.
Thank you so much, Lita.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, it is.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Brent, for that great and insightful session. And happy Halloween indeed. So I will just quickly go through some of the things that might be valuable to our learners today. So we'll start at the very beginning, that is the website itself, www.netcomlearning.com. So this is a very straightforward landing page, and there are different ways to get into the vendor of your choice. So right now we are focusing on Microsoft. So you can just straight away click here on Microsoft, or you can just scroll down a little bit further and click here. Or if you're feeling a bit adventurous, you can always go to the training and click on your vendor of choice, that is Microsoft. Now, we are an authorized training provider, a gold level learning partner for Microsoft. So all our trainings and offerings are official and sourced directly from Microsoft. One great asset for learners to explore on this page is, in addition to, of course, the great resources that are mapped and also provided as part of your handout, is the role-based certification path, right? So if you click on it, you're going to be greeted with a document like this. Now, this covers the entire official Microsoft training portfolio that we have. And this is in direct alignment with what Microsoft recommends and provides as part of their official training offerings. Now, within this Microsoft 365 product line, which of course comes under Modern Workplace, which has all the M365 line of certifications, as well as the supporting courses that you need to go through as recommended by Microsoft in order to get Microsoft certified on that particular role. It's very straightforward as it looks. You start with the fundamentals if you're just new, but you can quickly move into the role-based certifications for your upskilling based on your specific job roles and requirements. And you have the certification as well as the course listings here. For example, if you want to get into the Security Administrator Associate, you can just click on this, or you can look on this MS 500 course, which is also the supporting exam, right? So it gives you the code and that clarity that what is the right learning path for you to follow. And hey, look at this, what we have found. It's the Cybersecurity Month. Well, it's coming to an end, but it's very critical that we understand the value of security. And for this cybersecurity one, for a very limited time, we are running this buy one, get one promotion offer on all cybersecurity courses. And of course, MS500, which is the Microsoft 365 Security Administration, it kind of qualifies into that very select group of courses. So, and the easy way to find it is you come to our website, and everywhere there is this banner that is very convenient and clear, that you click on it and it brings you to that buy one get one offer. So the offer is applicable across all the courses that apply, that qualify under this offering. So if you are particularly interested in Microsoft, you can go for this in particular if you are interested in M365, or you can mix and match with other security offerings. Buy one get one applies for all these courses. So whatever is the higher priced amount, you get that, and you pay for that, and you get the other course, with whether it's the same offering if you are looking for training multiple people on the same course, or you can also go for selecting a different course of your choice from within this selection. Another great offer. So we are believers in the value of lifelong learning, right? That's what our vision is. So we always have many promotions going on at the same time to empower our learners, right? So if you go to promotion section of our website, you would be greeted with multiple offerings, and some directly catered towards Microsoft itself. So Microsoft buy one get one, it's part of the cybersecurity BOGO offer. You can explore that. But also I would recommend for people who are looking forward to gain some professional validation for their skills, they can always opt for this 25% off on Microsoft exam vouchers, right? So this is a specific limited time offer. It's only valid till January of 31st, 2022. So this new year, I would suggest as a resolution, let's get Microsoft certified, right? It adds immensely to your career as an individual professional, but also as an employer, it gives you the scope of identifying the right talent, maximizing the productivity of your employees, and actually seeing that translate into business impact. So this is a very self-explanatory page. Feel free to go through all of it in your own time, explore all these certifications and the great offerings that we have. And on this promotions page, you'd also find we do offer private group trainings on specific Microsoft offerings. So like Dynamics 365, Power Apps, you can request for a private group training based on your specific requirement for more than 10 learners. And it's all straightforward. Happy learning, everyone. Back to you, Leela.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to go ahead and hop right into our question and answer session. As soon as we are finished with those questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's session. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and get them into the questions panel right now. You don't want to miss out on that opportunity to ask the experts. So our first question that I'm seeing today is, what is the best way to manage our M365 rollout?
Use the fast path tools. So in the slide deck, you saw a picture of the Fast Track website that Microsoft offers. And if you just do a simple Google search for M365 Fast Track, you'll be able to get in there and use that as the method to get your deployment done.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we have another question here. How long would that or should that take to deploy?
Depending upon how many of the applications you're working with, anywhere from, I'd say 12 to 20 weeks. If it's a few number, then shorter. If it's more, then longer, but anywhere from 12 to 20 weeks. Wonderful.
Let's see. As I mentioned, we'll wrap up as soon as we get through these. I'm seeing one more question right now. What is the best way to keep staff up to date?
Train. Whether it's internal documentation, weekly newsletters, refresher classes, video training, whatever, end user training like at NetCom, but making sure that the users are constantly being trained on the tool and the technology.
Wonderful, because this is not the kind of industry that you can just sit on your hands with. You have to be active and learning and
Yes.
engaged.
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, I feel like all of our experts that we have on, one of the biggest things that they say is that they are constantly learning, which is something we really support here at NetCom, just being those lifelong learners.
Yeah, you
From what I'm,
can't.
oh, go
You
ahead.
can't just. I was gonna say you can't just learn it and go, okay, I'm done, and then you have to keep up with it. So it changes hourly.
And I've found myself that when you stop learning, you just don't feel as happy in life. You feel like you have more purpose, and you're just generally your state of well-being is happier when you are able to continue to have like the learning goals to work towards. So I'm really happy to be a part, and I'm really happy that we got you to join us today. I know you have a busy schedule. You're a very important person. We don't have any more questions in our question panel right now, Brent. So I am going to thank you for coming, and we're going to go ahead and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training from one of our awesome trainers, just like you. In addition to today's informative webinar, we have a lot of awesome webinars coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for joining us here today, taking time out of your busy schedules. If you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. And we hope that you found today's webinar to be informative, and we really look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful day.